I used to think trust was something you could rebuild, like a cracked wall you could plaster over if you just tried hard enough. I believed people messed up, learned, apologized, and moved forward. I believed that love, real love, was stronger than suspicion. But life has this way of showing you the truth in moments you never see coming. And sometimes that truth hides in places you never even think to look. Mine was hiding in a device I didn't even realize was sinking in the background of my life. It started on a random Tuesday morning. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. The kind of morning where you're half asleep, moving on autopilot, expecting the world to behave exactly the way it did yesterday. I remember making coffee, opening my laptop, and thinking only about the emails I needed to answer before work. Then a notification popped up on the top right corner of the screen, one of those tiny banners that disappear if you blink. Except I didn't blink. I froze. It said, "New photo added to your iCloud." At first, I didn't think anything of it. I assumed it was one of my own screenshots, receipts, or something stupid I saved accidentally. But then another notification appeared, and then another, and then another. 5 photos in maybe 10 seconds. That was unusual. I barely take 5 photos a week, let alone 5 within a moment. But what really made me stop was a thumbnail. It was a picture I didn't take. I clicked the notification, expecting maybe a glitch or some old archive photo resurfacing. But instead, my screen opened to a folder I hadn't seen before, one labeled with her name. My girlfriend, my partner of 3 years, the woman I thought I was building a future with. At that point, I still wasn't suspicious. I thought maybe she accidentally logged into her iCloud on my laptop months ago and forgot to log out. We shared Netflix accounts, Spotify passwords, and tech overlap wasn't unusual. But something felt strangely private about the folder I was now seeing. It wasn't organized like someone who expected another person to have access. It wasn't curated. It wasn't filtered. It was a raw, messy, unedited life. The kind of things you keep only for yourself. The newest photo was a mirror selfie. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing scandalous. Just her, standing in what looked like a hotel bathroom. But she wasn't on a trip. Or at least, she hadn't told me she was. She had told me she was at her friend's apartment for a girls' night, something she did often enough that I didn't think to question it. Still, I kept staring at the background of that photo. The tile pattern looked unfamiliar. The lighting was way too fancy for an apartment. The little folded towels on the counter were arranged in a way only hotels do, like they're trying too hard to impress. A knot started forming in my stomach, but it was the second photo that made that knot twist. It was a picture of a dinner table. 2 wine glasses, one half full, one empty, a plate with a half-eaten steak, a hand, clearly not heard, resting on the table, near a watch I didn't recognize. I zoomed in. My hands were shaking now, and I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. It could have been a stranger sitting next to her at a restaurant, a waiter, a friend, anyone. But then the third photo loaded. It was a selfie of her again, this time smiling, chin resting on her hand, eyes soft in the way she used to look at me. Except her focus wasn't the camera. It was whoever was sitting across from her, whoever was making her smile that way. I felt something inside me shift. Not broken yet, just shift. Like the ground under my feet suddenly tilted, and I had to figure out whether I was losing my balance or the world around me was. I closed the Photos app, breathing hard, trying to stay rational. I kept telling myself it wasn't evidence. Not really. People take pictures. Life is full of coincidences. Maybe she and her friends had gone somewhere nicer for dinner than she implied. Maybe the watch belonged to someone's boyfriend who joined them. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. But then the messages started syncing. Another iCloud notification appeared. New message received. Not my message. Hers. My heart dropped before I even clicked it. The preview alone made my throat tighten. It said, "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." I clicked. Her message thread opened. Not with me, obviously. With a contact saved under a name I didn't recognize. No emoji, no heart, just a simple first name. That alone told me everything I needed to know, because she never saved people normally unless they were co-workers or acquaintances. Anyone important had heart emojis or little inside joke nicknames. His first message at the top of the thread said, "Miss you already." 2 minutes later, her reply, "Me too. Wish I could have stayed longer." I sat completely still. I didn't scroll. I didn't breathe. I didn't do anything except stare at the words that, in a single instant, made the world tilt so violently I wasn't sure my legs would hold me if I stood. 3 years. 3 years of building trust, sharing dreams, planning trips, arguing about stupid things like dishes or what to order for takeout. 3 years of believing I was enough, that we were enough. And here she was, writing to another man about wishing she could have stayed longer. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was denial. I tried to convince myself I was misreading. Maybe it was a cousin visiting. Maybe it was some emotional venting I didn't understand yet. But denial crumbled quickly. My body felt like it already knew, even if my mind wasn't ready. My hands moved on their own, scrolling up the conversation, even though I didn't want to. Every scroll felt like peeling off a layer of skin, slow, raw, exposing. The messages were all there, weeks of them, maybe months. I couldn't tell. The timestamps blurred into one long betrayal. Sweet messages, flirty messages, plans, jokes, good mornings, good nights, hearts, kisses, pictures, all the things she had slowly stopped giving me, without me even realizing. I stared at the screen until my coffee went cold, until the room felt too quiet, until I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. And then, suddenly, I became aware of a horrifying thought. If her iCloud synced automatically, what else was syncing? I opened the Photos app again. The folder has been updated. New pictures began appearing one by one. Pictures she was taking in real time. And that's when the truth really began to unfold. I didn't move for a few seconds after the new photos appeared on the screen because something about them felt immediate. Like I wasn't looking at memories anymore, but at moments still happening somewhere else without me in them. The notifications kept stacking, one after another, each accompanied by that familiar chime that now felt like a warning instead of something harmless. A picture of her sitting in a car at night, streetlights glowing softly across her face, and she was laughing at something just outside the frame. Another photo followed immediately. This time she was holding a coffee cup, wearing a jacket I had never seen before, standing next to a man whose face was partially turned away. I zoomed in instinctively, my breath catching as I tried to focus on details. Anything that could tell me I was wrong. But I wasn't wrong. The messages were still open in another tab, and I switched back and forth between them, and the photos like my brain was trying to find a version of reality that didn't collapse under its own weight. Another message popped in. He again said he couldn't wait to see her tonight, and her reply was almost instant. That line hit harder than anything before, because it wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was awareness that I had been living inside a version of her life that she had carefully separated from mine. My chest tightened, and I stood up in the chair without realizing it, pacing across the room while my laptop stayed open on the desk like an accusation I couldn't escape. I told myself to calm down, to think logically, but logic felt like something I had left behind in a different version of the morning. I opened her location settings next because I needed confirmation of something, anything that would stabilize the chaos. And there it was, live location shared. She was not at her friend's apartment like she had told me. She was somewhere downtown, moving slowly block by block. I watched the dot shift on the map, like a heartbeat I could no longer trust. My phone buzzed again, this time not iCloud, but a message from her. "Hey, just got back home. Everything okay?" I stared at that message for a long time because she was lying, and I knew she was lying, and she also knew that I might believe her. That was the most disturbing part, not the cheating itself, but the confidence in it. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I closed the laptop slowly as if shutting it would shut down everything happening inside it. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you close the lid. I learned that in that moment. Because as soon as I picked up my phone again, another notification arrived. A new photo, and this one had no doubt left in it at all. It was her hand holding his fingers, intertwined with hers. There was no ambiguity in that image, no possible explanation I could hide behind anymore. I felt something inside me go completely still, not calm, not acceptance, but a kind of silent collapse like a structure giving up without noise. I sat back down slowly, eyes fixed on the screen, as if looking away would make it less real. My mind started replaying everything I had ignored over the past months. The late replies, the sudden secrecy, the phone turned face down, the girls' nights. That came more frequently. I had called it trust. I had called it maturity. I had called it giving space. But now I saw it for what it really was. Avoidance. Another notification came through. Him. I miss you already. Her. I know I can't do this anymore. I need to tell him soon. That last line made my stomach drop again because it meant I wasn't just discovering betrayal. I was inside the final stage of it. The ending before the ending. I stood up again, this time faster, my hand shaking as I grabbed my keys without even thinking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that room staring at that screen another second, because something about seeing it in real time made it worse than anything I had ever imagined. The door handle felt cold as I reached for it, and right before I stepped out, my phone buzzed one more time. A final notification, a video this time, and I pressed play without thinking. The screen filled with her face, smiling, whispering, "I think he knows something is wrong." And she laughed, not nervously, not sadly, but like it was a game she was winning. That was the moment I stopped being confused and started becoming something else entirely. I didn't close the video immediately. Instead, I watched the rest of it even though every second felt like something inside me was being rewritten in real time. She tilted her head and said softly that she was careful, that she knew how to manage things, and that I would never find out if she didn't make mistakes. I turned off the phone finally after that and stood in silence in my apartment, feeling like the walls were no longer mine. I knew one thing for certain now. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern, and I was done being blind to it. I opened the door again and stepped out into night air, not knowing what I was going to do next. I drove without really deciding where I was going. My hand stayed locked on the steering wheel, as if letting go would make everything collapse completely. The city outside looked normal. People walking, lights blinking, traffic moving in patterns that didn't care about what I had just seen. That was the strangest part. Life didn't stop just because mine had split in two. Her last message kept replaying in my head. I think he knows something is wrong. Not guilt, not fear, just awareness. Like I was a variable she had failed to calculate correctly. I told myself I was going to confront her, but even that word felt too clean for what I was feeling. Confrontation implies conversation, explanation, maybe even resolution. What I had wasn't that. It was exposure. The location dot on my phone showed she was still moving. Slowly now, back toward what I assumed was home, or what she had been calling home. I stopped the car a few streets away from our building. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed a moment where I wasn't reacting, where I could decide what kind of version of myself was going to walk into this. I sat there watching people pass by on the sidewalk, laughing, carrying groceries, talking about things that felt impossibly distant. I wonder if any of them had ever opened something they weren't supposed to see and had their entire understanding of someone rewritten in seconds. My phone buzzed again. Her, where are you? That was the first honest question she had asked all day. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the sync photos again. I don't know why. It was like touching something painful just to confirm it still hurt. The latest image was time-stamped minutes ago. She was standing outside a building I didn't recognize. Her expression different now, less playful, more alert, like she had shifted into a version of herself that understood risk. And then I saw him clearly for the first time. Not just a hand, not just a shadow. His face was partially visible now as they stood close, talking. I didn't recognize him. That should have made it easier. It didn't, because it meant this was an emotional history. It wasn't a mistake from the past creeping back in. It was something built in parallel to me, a separate track of her life I had never been invited into. My grip tightened on the phone until I realized I was shaking again. Then another. Her, are you okay? The irony almost made me laugh. Almost. I finally started the car again and drove the rest of the way without thinking too much. My mind had shifted into something quieter now. Not calm, but focused, like emotion had been replaced by observation. When I reached the building, I didn't go up immediately. I stood outside for a moment, looking at the entrance. The glass doors reflected my own face back at me. I barely recognized it. I wonder when exactly I had become someone who needed an iCloud sync to understand his own relationship. I went inside. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have. Every floor number lit up like a countdown I didn't want to finish. When the doors opened, I heard nothing unusual. No signs of anything dramatic waiting for me. Just the normal quiet of a shared hallway. Her door was slightly open. That detail alone told me everything about how this night was going to end. I pushed it gently. Inside, the apartment looked normal too. Too normal. That kind of normal people arrange on purpose when they want to pretend nothing is happening. And then I saw her, standing near the couch, phone in hand, frozen when she saw me. There was a moment just on where neither of us spoke. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No immediate explanations. Just recognition. The kind that happens when two versions of reality finally collide in the same space. Her eyes flicked to my phone, then back to my face. She knew. She knew what I had seen, without me saying a word. I can explain, she said finally, and I almost believed she would try. But I didn't answer. I just looked at her, not with anger yet, not even sadness. Just clarity forming too late to undo anything. She stepped forward slightly, like she was trying to control the distance between us the way she had been controlling everything else. It's not what you think, she added quickly. That line used to mean something to me. Now it just sounded like a delay. I raised my phone and showed her the last synced image. No words, just the picture. Her face changed immediately. Not shocked, not confusion. Calculation. Because now she knew I had the timeline. Not assumptions. Not suspicion. Proof. And for the first time since this began, she did not control the narrative. The silence between us stretched longer this time. Heavy. Real. Then she said something that changed everything again, but not in the way she expected. I was going to end it. She said it as it mattered, like intention could undo action. But I didn't move, because in that moment, I realized something worse than betrayal. It wasn't that she had lied. It was that she had built two lives, so carefully she thought she could keep them both stable forever. And I had just been the one who accidentally found the bridge between them. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there holding my phone, watching her try to rebuild control over a moment that had already slipped past her reach. The air between us felt dense, like even breathing would disturb something fragile and already broken. She repeated herself again, softer this time. I was going to end it. I swear I was. But I had stopped reacting to promises a long time ago. Promises were easy. Patterns were not. I looked around the room, without really focusing on anything. The couch, the half-folded blanket, the faint smell of her perfume still lingering, as if nothing had changed. That was what disturbed me most. The world around her still looked normal, even after everything had been exposed. How long? I finally asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded flat, stripped of everything that used to make it familiar. She hesitated. That hesitation answered more than words could. Does it matter? She said quietly, stepping closer again. And I almost laughed, because that was exactly the kind of question people ask when they want the truth to hurt less than it should. Yes, I said, it matters. She looked down for a moment, then back up at me, searching for something in my face that she couldn't find anymore. Maybe forgiveness, maybe confusion, maybe the version of me who hadn't seen everything yet. It started months ago, she admitted. That sentence landed differently than everything before it. Not because it was new information, but because it confirmed what I had already started to understand in fragments. This wasn't a mistake from one night. This was a second life, carefully maintained over time. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to her. Months, while I was asking about her day. She was living another one, while I was trusting silence. She was filling it elsewhere, while I was building consistency. She was splitting it. I didn't plan for it to happen. she added quickly, as that mattered. But I had already stopped listening for excuses. I was listening for structure now, for truth without decoration. How many times? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. That silence told me it was not a number she wanted to say out loud. Enough, she finally said. Enough. A word that meant everything and nothing at the same time. I took a slow breath and set my phone down on the table beside me. The sound of it touching what felt louder than anything she had said. I saw everything. I said, the photos, the messages, the videos. Her expression tightened slightly, not in surprise, but in resignation. As she had expected, this moment eventually came, just not so soon. I didn't want you to find out like this, she said. That's the only part one believe. I replied. That made her stop. For the first time, she didn't have a follow-up. The silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't heavy with emotion. It was empty, clean in a way that felt irreversible. I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch without taking my eyes off her. Not because I needed to watch her, but because I needed to understand what I was actually looking at now. Not the person I had loved, not the version I had built my life around. Something else entirely. What was I to you? I asked. The question came out quieter than I expected. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. That pause told me she didn't have a version of the answer that wouldn't make things worse. You mattered to me, she said finally, but even she didn't sound convinced by it. I nodded again, accepting the answer without letting it settle into me, because I realized something in that moment. The problem wasn't just what she had done. It was how easily she had separated emotion from consequence, how she had managed to keep guilt from interfering with continuation, how she had learned to live in contradictions without breaking under them. I think you believe that, I said quietly, that you could keep everything separated forever. Her eyes flickered at that. And I think you were right for a while. That was the first honest thing I had said since walking into the apartment, because she had been right. It had worked. Until it didn't. She sat down across from me now, slower, as her body had finally accepted the weight of the moment. I didn't want to lose you, she said. And for the first time, I saw something real in her expression. Not manipulation, not a strategy, something closer to fear. But it came too late. You didn't lose me, I said. You replaced me while still keeping me in place. That sentence changed the air again. She looked away. Outside, I could hear distant traffic, life continuing as if none of this mattered. And that was the part that felt strangest. There was no dramatic ending built into reality. No music. No collapse. Another message came through. Her. Please answer me. Just two people sitting in a room, realizing the timeline they shared no longer existed in the same way. I stood up slowly. She looked at me immediately. What are you going to do? I paused at the door. For a second, I didn't know the answer. Not because I was uncertain, but because the answer wasn't emotional anymore. It was procedural. I don't know yet, I said honestly, and that was the truth, because betrayal doesn't always end with shouting or forgiveness or closure. Sometimes it just ends with understanding that what you thought was one story was actually two running side by side, never meant to meet until they finally did. I opened the door and stepped out. Behind me, she didn't call my name again, and that silence followed me all the way down the hallway, into the elevator, and into the night that felt exactly the same as before, except I wasn't the same person inside it anymore.